What's going on, guys? Welcome to Bioactive Builds. Today I got a really cool video for you guys. We're going to be making a small scale superworm or mealworm breeding farm. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. Comment below. I'd love to read all your guys' comments and become part of the Bioactive Builds army. And if you don't think that we have enough subscribers to be an army, quick Google search will let you know that the smallest army in the world is the Pontifical Swiss Guard. Just found that out. And they are charged with protecting the Pope. So they have 135 members and we already have more subscribers than them. So not only are we an army, but we're not even the smallest army in the world. So go ahead and subscribe and join that army. So today, as I said, we're gonna be making a superworm breeding farm. I've got this little 3-tier, it's like a drawer set. I just got it for, it's like $6, got it at Walmart. And the reason I'm doing this is because, you know, if you have reptiles, then you know that buying all these supplies and food for them can kind of add up over time, especially if you're going to pet stores where they really overcharge that kind of thing. So I wanted to create a small scale breeding setup just so maybe I can lessen the load of me having to buy things at the pet store and ideally not have to go there at all for my superworms or mealworms. So I do have this little enclosure with darkling beetles and they produce, you know, a certain amount of superworms, but this wasn't really for breeding. This was just kind of for, I don't know, a little fun project. But this is not an ideal situation for them to breed. So actually, if I want to have a breeding scale operation of sorts, then this is definitely gonna increase that production. So although this is kind of just a cool little side project, this is gonna be something I can really use to have a feeding supply. So if this is something you might be interested in, feel free to follow along at home. It's really easy, it doesn't take a lot of money to get started, and as you can see, something just this small can have a pretty big impact on the amount of worms that you can create. The basic idea of this is gonna be there's 3 layers. The first one is gonna be housing the beetles. And as they reproduce and lay eggs, I'm going to put a screen mesh here so the eggs will sift down into this second drawer. Second drawer will have the eggs, and as they hatch, they'll grow out. And I would kind of leave them in a little bit till they're a certain size where I can pick them out and put them into the third drawer. Third drawer is going to be for the adult larvae or those worms that you would be feeding. This drawer would be ready for feeding all my reptiles. And if they start to pupate in here, I would just go ahead and put them back in the first drawer. They become beetles and the cycle continues. So ideally, you would start with a supply of worms and then have some of them pupate so you can get some beetles. I don't really have that many, so I'm not sure how long it's gonna take to get this cycle going, but I did just buy some superworms and I have a few darkling beetles. So hopefully that will jumpstart it, and I'll try not feeding them too much to allow these guys to pupate. And then once it's all set up and going, then I shouldn't have any problem just feeding these as I go along. So the first step for me is going to be taking out this first drawer, cutting out the bottom and putting in a screen mesh. So let's do that right now. One of the tools you're gonna wanna need is an X-Acto knife or something sharp to cut these boxes out with. So I'm just gonna take the knife, go around the edge, try not to leave any of the space left because I wanna have it fully covered in mesh to allow those eggs to drop through. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is because the darkling beetles can be cannibalistic, so you want to get those eggs out of there, and then as they hatch, when they're really vulnerable and small, you want them to drop in this second crate so they have somewhere to grow without the risk of being eaten by those beetles. So I'm gonna cut this out first and then try and super glue that mesh right on there. So I'm noticing that instead of trying to punch it through and then cut it in one fell swoop, I tried doing that and it kind of split the plastic. So I'm just scoring it a couple times and then just letting the knife go through a little bit more each time, and then eventually it will cut back. But I'm still having an issue with it just splitting, but as long as I'm a bit more careful, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. This is actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. This plastic doesn't want to get cut straight, so I'm just trying to be slow and steady with it. Not perfect, but it'll do. Some of these cracks you see here shouldn't be a problem because it actually didn't go through all the way. Now that you've cut the inside piece out, you're gonna want to get your mesh screen on the top. There's a couple different meshes that you can use. A lot of people use like a wire mesh, but what I have is this mesh that I use as like a substrate barrier for all my enclosures, and it should work just fine. So gonna lay it over the top and then mark it out. So scissors probably gonna be a better thing for this. I'm gonna cut more than I need and then kind of cut it to size once I have a smaller piece to work with. So now that I have a piece that's about the size I'm gonna use, I'm gonna be super gluing it from the bottom of the drawer. I'm gonna super glue around the edges and then I'll be able to cut off that excess once it's dried. So let me get my hot glue gun. All right, my hot glue gun is heated up. I'm just trying to go one edge at a time and try and make sure that it's as taut as possible while I'm doing this. Actually, it's probably best if I glue underneath here and then just put the mesh on. Not really sure how to press this mesh on without getting the glue all over my fingers, but if you figure that out, then kudos to you. All right, so I did that along the inside. I'm also gonna go around just on the other side just to make sure it's secure. So I'm gonna do that real quick. So now I'm just gonna kind of run my finger along the edge and make sure I didn't miss any spots and just touch up any spots that they might be able to get through. And this doesn't need to look that nice because it is gonna be covered with the substrate. You just really wanna make sure that the screen is taut and that there's no gaps in it. So this is what I got so far. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off the excess mesh and then peel off some of the dried bits of glue that I don't need and it should be good to go. All right, so that's done. It's not the prettiest thing I've ever made, but it'll work. It's pretty taut. The screen covers most of the bottom. And this is the only drawer for my setup that I'm gonna need a screen for. You can use the other drawers, they can have screens and there's multi-tier systems so that you can shake it and get the frass out. So put this back in the bin. That fits nicely. All right, very good. So now it's time to put in their substrate, which is also their food. I'm using oatmeal. Basically anything with the word meal in it, that's what they're gonna eat. So you need about just like an inch or so. And as they eat it, what it's gonna happen is they're gonna produce something called frass, which is like their waste. It's just gonna be real fine, powdery stuff that will also go along with this. So you can shake this out, clean it. The eggs and the frass are gonna go in here. And as those mealworms hatch, I'll also put some oats in there. As they hatch, I'll pick them out and put it in the final tub here, which is what I'll be feeding. Or if they need to turn into pupa, then that's gonna happen in this third drawer. So the beetles and the worms, they're not really that good at climbing. However, if you do want to take another precaution that they don't get out, you can put some sticky tape around here, and that side that you're not sticking on it is going to be too slippery for them to climb. But actually, this is a really slick thing anyways, so it shouldn't be a problem. And I've created a bit of a mess, but I'm going to go ahead and do that for all three drawers. Put in their substrate. This one won't need as much because they're going to be the smaller worms. So I'm probably going to have to buy some more of these oats just so that they do have a bit more room to dig around. Yeah, I will. All right, let me clean this up. All right, so that's basically set up. And the only maintenance you're going to need to do is shake this around so the eggs and the frass can fall in here. Now, since both of these drawers do not have that mesh screen, I will have to eventually, as I see the substrates being eaten, I'll have to just sift it in separately and then put it back in here and maybe give it a quick wipe down. And then this will be their food and their substrate. All you're gonna need to do to hydrate them is throw in like a carrot or a potato. I would kind of stay away from fruits because that can lead gnats and other kind of insects to it. So I'm gonna be using carrot pieces, which I think is probably the best thing to use. So throw a carrot in there. Once it turns, dried up, or if it gets moldy, definitely take it out. Another thing I will say is that for this top layer that I'm gonna be using for the beetles, I'm also gonna be taking the pupa out of here and putting them in the beetle enclosure, the top drawer. And the reason I'm gonna put this thing in here is because since they're cannibalistic, I want the pupa to be able to hatch into the beetle enclosure but not be vulnerable while they're in their pupa stage. So what I'm gonna do is just have this little upside down cup, turned over cup, anything that's raised up and that the beetles won't be able to climb. Put the pupa on here. As they hatch, they will crawl down and just join the rest of the beetle colony. So leave that in there. I am noticing that this is kind of gonna be a little bit messy. because I have all these smaller oats. Every time I open this, it's gonna kind of get everywhere. So I don't know, hopefully as I shake this around, it'll fall down. Try and give it a good shake before I open it. But it shouldn't be too much of a problem. All right, so I guess the only thing now to do is to add some of the food and then take the mealworms that I do have and anything out of my old enclosure and start putting them in. I've got a tub that I just bought, 50 superworms. And I'm kind of using mealworms and superworms interchangeably. I'm gonna be using superworms though. So kind of works for both though. I'm gonna take them and put them in here. Now these are all adults. This is what the adult superworm looks like. Now, if I left this alone and deprived it of food or just isolated it from the others, it will start to pupate. So if you don't have enough of them turning into pupa in this tank because they don't do it when they're next to a bunch of other worms because they feel vulnerable, you can isolate them, wait for them to pupate, and then put them up in here. But for now, I'm just gonna put them in here one by one. I don't want to dump all of this in here just because I know there's probably a lot of frass in here, eaten food and waste. And also I don't really know what they were using. So I just want it to be consistent now that they have these delicious oats to eat. You can pick them up and handle them with your hands. They won't bite. They're, kind of squirmy, but I'm just doing this because it's easier to search around in here. Another thing I'm going to be doing, which I don't have right now, is just getting like an egg crate and cutting little pieces of it. I might use toilet paper rolls for now, but cutting pieces of egg crate just to give hiding spots for the beetles and the larger superworms in this bottom tank. That's all of these worms. And now I'm just going to try and do my best to sift through all this dirt and try and get whatever worms are left in there. So I have a few beetles in here. This is what they look like. Fully grown darkling beetles. They're harmless. So I'm just going to throw the ones that I do have in here. What I'm actually going to do is dump it all in here and give myself just an easier time going through it. Oh, there's a lot in here. Oh my gosh. Holy crap. See, there's so many in here, but with this, I can't dig down here very easily to get them out. Check this out. This is all the dirt that was in there. And there's actually quite a few in here. So I'll be able to have a good starting spot for this colony. I'm just gonna start grabbing them and putting them in. You can see this is one of the smaller ones. Now that's a big boy. Now there's probably a lot of eggs in here that I'm not gonna be able to get. I'm just gonna throw the rest of this dirt outside. Check out what they've done to this piece of wood. They've just chewed it up. There's holes all the way through it. If you can see all those white specks that are in this dirt, it's because I had a foam background, which they absolutely destroyed. It's pretty wild how many are in here. I sometimes at night or when I threw some food in there, I'd see maybe 10 up at the surface, but there's over 50 in here. And then I can't imagine how many little ones I'm not even gonna be able to find. So probably hundreds in here total. I can see the dirt just moving. It's like it's breathing. There's some big ones in here. I could look here for hours, I'm sure, and still not get all of them. So I'm just about ready to toss them. But just when I want to toss them, I find another one. That's the haul. That was all from just that little enclosure. All right, so dump these guys in. Try not to get the dirt in as much as possible. Man, they're loud when they're all squirming around. Since I don't have egg crate, I'm also just going to cut up some of these half-cut toilet paper rolls. You can use those. I'm definitely going to need to add some more of the substrate. And in fact, since I'm not using this one right now, I'm just going to go in here. I don't want to put it too high so that they can get out, but I definitely want them to be able to dig around in it because there's a lot more than I thought I had. All right, I'm going to throw some pieces of carrot in there for their hydration. That's that. So I'm just gonna keep this in this room, just room temperature, away from direct light. And these guys, hopefully they'll turn into pupa, or if not, I'll need to isolate them because I only have 2 beetles, so I'm definitely gonna have to up that population. But other than that, I think that just about does it. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and drop me a comment, let me know what you think, and try this at home. Try it, you can do a bigger scale. I think this is probably the smallest scale that you'd be able to get, But let me know how it goes, and thank you for watching the video. See you in the next one.